"Good morning," he whispered, kissing her softly on the forehead. She stirred a little, but remained asleep. He stood over her for another minute, taking in the serene look of her sleeping, committing this moment to memory. A tear began to well up in his eye. "Have a good day, my love," he said as he pulled away, a pang of sorrow beginning to tug at his chest. He turned away silently and walked out of their bedroom forever. He had been replaying that scene in his head since getting in his pickup and leaving her that morning. That had been at 6:09 a.m. Now the sun was edging closer to the horizon in the west in the early September evening sky. "Have a good day," he said out loud in the empty cab. He gave a bitter laugh. How lame is that for a final goodbye, he thought, gripping the steering wheel tighter, the road in front of him stretching on forever. It was tradition, his brain countered. You always said that to her before leaving for the day. Blame it on force of habit if you must, but at least you were able to leave. He sighed. He had lost count of how many times he had that little discussion with himself during the trip. Always the same outcome, always the same resignation to his fate. He had already played out every single possible outcome from every single possible way that he had tried to get out of the situation, but it always boiled down to him losing her in the end. This way may seem like the coward's way of doing it, but it was the best way to spare her the least amount of pain in the end. That's what he kept telling himself, at least. He had been traveling west, mostly on Interstate 80, stopping only for gas and food, though he didn't really have much of an appetite. His journey would take him through Omaha, Nebraska, where he would change to a different road, one that led a little bit out of the way from normal civilization, one that took him all to where this began 10 years prior. So far, he was making good time, right on schedule. Then I have a bracket here that says stuff goes here, so I'm still working on that portion. Carrie's laughing because she read this and kind of saw what I did there. He arrived at his destination at a little before 11 p.m. Rusty's, very out of the way roadhouse style bar and grill, situated half an hour west of Omaha. Located in the very definition of the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest highway or any other signs of life. Despite this, the dusty parking lot was always filled with various pickup trucks, cars, and motorcycles. Strong word of mouth catering to a specific clientele. The place hasn't changed in 10 years, he thought, as he maneuvered his pickup next to a much larger black monstrosity sporting twin diesel exhausts and an impressive gun rack. He was counting on that. It was one of the two reasons why he spent the good part of the last decade restoring the 1983 GMC pickup he was driving, to blend in with the others in the lot. No one would look twice at it or get suspicious if it remained for an extended period of time before being reported as abandoned. The second most important reason was because it couldn't be traced like any of the modern vehicles on the road. He made sure that everything was as factory original as possible, from the engine rebuild down to the floor mats and upholstery. Of course, his wife thought his hobby was adorable and indulged him, going so far as purchasing an original factory AM/FM stereo with the big chrome knobs and the slot buttons for a hefty price off of eBay as a gift. No reason, she had said, just because. He had to pause for a couple of minutes to push down the sudden rise of emotion. Now was not the time. He took a deep breath, and he shut the pickup off. He had an hour. Might as well go inside and get settled in. He exited the pickup and, pausing long enough to glance at where the two gravel-covered dirt roads intersected beyond the parking lot, he turned and walked to the front entrance of Rusty's, the music from inside blaring a muffled serenade. More stuff goes here, the brackets. He felt the presence before the song was over. Without even opening his eyes, he knew someone was now sitting opposite of him. I really like how they kept the aesthetic of the place relatively unchanged over the years, a voice that had haunted his nightmare said. He opened his eyes and, sitting on the other booth, was someone he had never seen before. A young, slender man dressed in an expensive suit and smiling broadly, flashing a dazzling set of teeth. He had a smartphone in front of him. Hey, Robbie. So glad that you remembered to show up tonight. Robbie saw some heads turn and glance at them from around the bar. Well, so much for remaining inconspicuous, he thought. Is that really you? He asked. The guy chuckled. Of course it's me. There's no way I was going to miss this night. Besides, I've never missed an appointment for as long as I've been doing this. I recognize your voice, Robbie replied. You look different. Oh yeah, a brand new skin suit. He looked himself over. One of the problems with you humans is that you tend to break down after extended usage. Mileage will vary, but the general time frames is maybe 2, 3 years, and before the check engine light comes on. He looked back at Robbie and smiled again. Picked up this new hotness a month ago at one of those hip microbreweries. Still reeks of pretentiousness, but why are you here now? Robbie interrupted. It's still a while until midnight. The eyes looking at Robbie narrowed a bit. No need to be rude, he said. Yes, any other person. I would show up right at the agreed upon time, right on the dot. Keeps things strictly professional. Then he pointed directly at Robbie. You, however. He leaned forward and rested his elbows on the table. What? Robbie couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed at this invasion of the last few minutes of his life as he knew it. He didn't say anything, just looked at Robbie thoughtfully for a couple more minutes. Finally, he lifted up his smartphone. Did you know, he said, that this place had one of those internet jukeboxes installed a few years ago? He began poking at the screen of the phone. Okay, Robbie answered. I have no idea what that has to do. They got rid of that big old CD jukebox that they had taken up at the back area by the dartboard. Now that they have this shiny, flashy touchscreen that has access to thousands of songs, so you're not limited to just a handful of CDs they're able to fit in the old setup. No longer are you restricted to whatever the general music taste of the local clientele is. Now, whatever your flavor, you can share it with everyone, whether they like it or not. They even have a smartphone app interface for it, so you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own booth. Here we go. He touched the area of the phone screen, and almost immediately Conway Twitty began crooning about running into a past love. Satisfied, he put his phone down, folded his hands, and looked directly at Robbie, a look of intense curiosity on his face. In the time that you had left, I want to understand something. Robbie shrugged. What's that? Why did you do it? Robbie blinked. Huh? Why did you make the deal with me?